Picture the scene. You are standing in the sterile, brightly lit hallways of the Indiana Fever practice facility in the heart of Indianapolis. The air inside this massive building is usually filled with the rhythmic, comforting sounds of squeaking sneakers, bouncing basketballs, and the generic, upbeat chatter of a professional sports team getting ready for a brand new season. But today the atmosphere is entirely different. The air is thick, it is heavy, it is completely and utterly suffocating. The tension in that building is so palpable that you could cut it with a chainsaw. It feels like you are standing in the dead center of a massive powder keg and someone is casually flicking a lighter just a few inches away from a fuse. We are officially on the absolute brink of the 2026 WNBA regular season. The expectations are astronomical. The pressure is completely unprecedented in the entire history of women's professional sports. But instead of unity, instead of a locked-in, laser-focused championship culture, what we are currently witnessing in Indianapolis is a rapidly escalating, high-stakes power struggle. It is the ultimate clash of philosophies. It is the unstoppable force of a generational, paradigm-shifting superstar colliding head-on with the immovable object of an established, stubborn head coach. Caitlin Clark has just drawn a massive, unmistakable line in the sand. She has sent a terrifying, public warning shot directly across the bow of head coach Stephanie White. And the message is absolutely crystal clear. The cowardly excuses stop right now, or heads are going to roll in the front office. Welcome back to WNBA She Serves. You already know exactly why you clicked on this video. If you are sick and tired of the mainstream sports media networks covering up the locker room drama with corporate public relations fluff, if you are exhausted by the polite, sanitized narratives that completely ignore the brutal reality of professional sports, you have found your absolute sanctuary. We do not sugarcoat the reality. We do not protect the front offices. We give you the raw, high-octane, uncompromising analysis that you actually deserve. Grab a seat, lock in, and turn your volume all the way up to the maximum level. Because today, we are surgically dissecting the absolute breaking point in Indianapolis. We are breaking down the exact, chilling sentiment that Caitlin Clark has projected to publicly put Stephanie White on absolute notice. We are exposing the tactical malpractice that led to this massive fracture. And we are analyzing the terrifying historical precedent of what happens when a franchise player decides that her head coach is no longer fit to steer the ship. Let us immediately set the context, because you absolutely cannot understand the magnitude of this warning without fully understanding the unmitigated disaster that was the Indiana Fever preseason. For the last 3 weeks, the Indiana Fever have looked completely, fundamentally broken on the basketball court. We watched them get humiliated by the Dallas Wings on their own home floor. We watched the second unit completely and totally collapse the exact second Caitlin Clark went to the bench for a much-needed breather. We watched horrific, archaic defensive rotations that allowed opposing teams to shoot uncontested layups as if they were running drills in an empty gym. But the most enraging part of this entire preseason was not the terrible execution on the hardwood. Bad games happen. Rust is a real thing. No, the most enraging part was the reaction from the head coach. Every single time the Fever got blown out, every single time the tactical schemes completely imploded and the players looked visibly frustrated, Stephanie White stepped up to the post-game microphone and delivered a masterclass in cowardly, passive-aggressive excuses. She smiled for the cameras. She talked about learning moments. She talked about trusting the process. She had the absolute audacity to look the fiercely loyal, highly educated Indiana fan base directly in the eye and claim that she saw a lot of positive things during a double-digit blowout loss where the team looked completely devoid of energy and direction. Stephanie White has spent the entire offseason trying to artificially lower the expectations. She has desperately tried to build a psychological safety net to protect her own job security. She wants the media, the fans, and the front office to believe that this roster is simply too young, too inexperienced, and too raw to actually compete for a WNBA championship right now. She wants the cushion of a multi-year rebuild. But there is one massive, glaring, insurmountable problem with that passive, defeatist strategy. Caitlin Clark is fundamentally not programmed to accept defeat. You have to truly understand the psychological profile of the player we are talking about. Caitlin Clark does not operate on a casual 5-year rebuilding timeline. She does not care about moral victories. She does not care about learning experiences as she enters the prime of her professional career. She is a basketball psychopath in the absolute best, most Michael Jordan-esque sense of the word. She is a ruthless, bloodthirsty competitor who demands absolute, flawless perfection from herself, from her teammates, and most importantly, from the coaching staff holding the whiteboard on the sidelines. She hates losing more than she loves breathing, and she has officially heard enough of the excuses. This brings us to the massive, undeniable warning that just sent absolute shockwaves through the entire WNBA landscape. As the regular season rapidly approaches, the tone surrounding the Fever locker room has shifted dramatically. The superstar point guard has made it abundantly clear, through her body language, her intense court demeanor, and her highly calculated media responses, that the honeymoon phase is officially over. When reporters ask about the team's readiness and the struggles they faced in the preseason, Caitlin Clark is no longer giving the media-trained, polite answers that the PR department wants her to give. She is looking directly into the camera, her eyes completely devoid of emotion, and she is dropping a tactical nuke on the Indiana Fever coaching staff. The underlying message is this: we are completely done learning. The preseason is over. The time for figuring things out, making adjustments, and making excuses is behind us. We have the sheer talent in this locker room to beat anyone in the world, but the execution, the strategic schemes, and the intensity have to be at a championship level starting today. If we are not put in the absolute best position to succeed tactically, that is a massive failure. I am not here to participate. I am here to win. Let that sentiment echo in your mind for a second. Let the sheer, unprecedented weight of that warning completely sink in. The schemes have to be at a championship level. If we are not put in the absolute best position to succeed, Caitlin Clark does not have to explicitly say the name Stephanie White out loud for the message to be received loud and clear. In the highly politicized, carefully curated, hyper-analyzed world of professional sports media, that kind of sentiment is the exact equivalent of a formal declaration of war. It is a direct, undeniable, pinpoint-accurate shot right at the chest of the head coach. Clark is publicly rejecting Stephanie White's entire trust the process narrative. She is looking at the coaching staff and essentially saying, I am doing my job. I am dropping 25 points a night. I am hitting logo threes with 2 defenders in my face. I am selling out the arenas, securing the television deals, and paying your salaries. Now you need to do your job and actually draw up a competent modern offensive system. It is a stunning, breathtaking assertion of power from a young superstar. But is she wrong? Is she out of line for demanding more from her head coach and her front office? Absolutely not. If anything, she is entirely, 100% justified. Because the tactical decisions being made by Stephanie White right now border on pure, unadulterated basketball malpractice. Let us dive deep into the X's and O's, because the game film absolutely does not lie. We do not deal in narratives here at WNBA She Serves. We deal in analytical reality. When you have Caitlin Clark on your roster, the entire physical geometry of the basketball court fundamentally changes. She possesses the greatest deep-range shooting gravity in the entire history of the sport. Opposing defenses are absolutely terrified of her. They are forced to double-team her, trap her, and face-guard her 35 feet away from the basket. That massive, unprecedented offensive gravity should inherently create massive, wide-open 4-on-3 advantages for the rest of the Indiana Fever roster. It should be an absolute, unguardable feast for players like Aaliyah Boston in the paint. The floor should be spaced to absolute perfection. But what does Stephanie White do? How does she utilize this once-in-a-lifetime paradigm-shifting offensive weapon? She takes the basketball out of her hands. Stephanie White is stubbornly, arrogantly trying to force Caitlin Clark into a traditional, archaic, prehistoric offensive system. She is running predictable, slow-developing half-court sets, where Clark is frequently relegated to standing completely motionless in the corner as an off-ball decoy. It is absolute, undeniable insanity. It is the exact equivalent of owning a supersonic fighter jet, keeping it grounded, and exclusively driving it through a residential school zone at 15 miles per hour. Instead of empowering her superstar, Stephanie White is restricting her. She is trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, because she is fundamentally incapable of designing an innovative, high-paced offense that actually matches the unique, world-changing talents of her roster. And Caitlin Clark sees it. The fans see it. The independent analysts sitting in their film rooms see it. The only person who refuses to acknowledge the glaring reality is the head coach, who is desperately clinging to an outdated playbook that belongs in a museum, not on a modern WNBA sideline. This warning from Caitlin Clark is not just a passing comment born out of competitive frustration. It is a massive, definitive ultimatum. It is the ticking of a massive clock that is currently counting down to Stephanie White's termination. We have to look at the historical precedent here, because we have seen this exact movie play out before in the National Basketball Association, and the ending is always, without fail, exactly the same. When a generational, franchise-altering superstar realizes that their head coach is the absolute ceiling holding them back, a massive power struggle inevitably ensues. And in the modern era of player empowerment in professional sports, the superstar always wins. Think back to the early 1980s. Earvin Magic Johnson, arguably the greatest point guard to ever live, was in his third season with the Los Angeles Lakers. He realized that head coach Paul Westhead's rigid, slow-paced offensive system was completely suffocating his generational talent in transition. Magic went to the front office, issued a massive public warning, and demanded a trade if things did not change immediately. What happened next? The Lakers ownership fired Paul Westhead the very next day, promoted Pat Riley, unleashed the fast-breaking Showtime offense, and won multiple NBA championships. Think back to LeBron James in his physical prime. He realized that head coach David Blatt was completely out of his depth in the pressure cooker of the NBA Finals. He realized that the coach did not command the respect of the locker room and could not draw up the right plays in crunch time. The fiction became public. The warning signs were everywhere. The Cleveland Cavaliers front office did not hesitate for a single second. They fired David Blatt in the middle of a winning season, promoted Tyronn Lue, and immediately won a historic NBA championship against a 73-win team. The historical precedent is absolutely terrifying for Stephanie White. The writing is written in permanent marker on the wall. Caitlin Clark is not just a basketball player. She is an entire self-sustaining economy. She is the golden goose that is currently laying multi-billion-dollar broadcasting deals for the entire WNBA. She is the sole reason that the Indiana Fever franchise valuation has skyrocketed into the financial stratosphere. She is the reason the arenas are sold out. She is the reason the merchandise is flying off the shelves. She is the reason the league is flying on private charters. If it comes down to a choice between keeping a mediocre, stubborn, tactically flawed head coach, or keeping the most famous, economically powerful athlete on the planet happy and empowered, the Indiana Fever front office will pack Stephanie White's bags for her. They will call the Uber. They will drive her to the Indianapolis International Airport themselves. General Manager Lynn Dunn and the rest of the executive suite are officially on the clock. The regular season opener is literally days away. The incredibly bright, unforgiving lights of national television are going to be shining directly onto the Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Millions of fans from all across the globe are going to be watching every single possession, analyzing every single defensive rotation, and scrutinizing every single interaction between the franchise point guard and the head coach on the sideline. If the Indiana Fever step onto that hardwood and look disorganized, if they run the exact same stagnant, off-ball offensive sets that completely neutralize their superstar, if they fall behind early, and Stephanie White is seen standing on the sideline with her arms crossed, offering absolutely no tactical adjustments, the building is going to turn toxic immediately. The fans are going to violently, loudly turn on the coaching staff. The boos will rain down from the rafters. Caitlin Clark has officially taken the training wheels off this franchise. She has grabbed the steering wheel, looked directly at the head coach, and slammed her foot firmly onto the gas pedal. She is demanding absolute excellence. She is demanding that the Indiana Fever operate like a ruthless, championship-contending organization, rather than a passive, excuse-laden, collegiate developmental program. Stephanie White has exactly one option left. She must adapt, or she will be absolutely destroyed by the pressure. She must swallow her pride, rip up her archaic playbook, look at the film, and completely hand the keys of the offense over to the greatest offensive engine the sport has ever seen. She needs to let Caitlin Clark orchestrate the game the way she sees it. If she refuses, if she tries to win a foolish power struggle against a player who holds the entire financial future of the league in the palm of her hand, she will find herself completely unemployed before the All-Star break. The warning has been issued. The line has been drawn in the sand. The ultimate game of high-stakes chicken is currently happening in Indianapolis, and the entire basketball world is holding its collective breath, waiting to see who swerves first. This is WNBA She Serves. We do not bow to the corporate establishment. We do not care about protecting the fragile feelings of incompetent coaching staffs. We are here to deliver the raw, uncompromising, brutal truth about the game we all love. If you appreciate the deep dive, if you respect the unapologetic analysis that you simply cannot find anywhere else, do not just sit there. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm and force YouTube to push the absolute truth to the masses. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to officially join the WNBA She Serves family. We are building an army of educated basketball fans who demand accountability. And most importantly, I need to hear your absolute unfiltered thoughts in the comments section below. Was Caitlin Clark completely justified in putting her head coach on public notice? Is Stephanie White's offensive system holding the Fever back from winning a championship? And if the Fever start the season with a losing record, how fast will the front office pull the trigger and fire the head coach? I want to read every single theory, every single tactical breakdown, and every single hot take you have. Drop them in the comments right now. Keep your eyes on the court. Stay locked in, and we will see you on the next massive breakdown.